All right, everyone, Kamala Harris is definitely lying when she tells you you'll be able to keep your private insurance under the auspices of her healthcare overhaul, her reform of the healthcare system in the U.S. I'll tell you exactly why. If you really look at what she's saying she wants to accomplish, and part of it is, well, I want to give, what was it? I want to give relief to the disadvantaged or something, like more subsidies or something. So it's like, oh, for a select few, you'll help, the poor. That ties into her student loan plans. That's the other thing. I mean, I could almost make a separate video, but I'll just mention it in brief. Her student loan forgiveness system is going to be for disadvantaged people only. So basically, if you're like me and you've got 30 grand worth of student debt, but you've kind of made it, fuck you, essentially. Even worse than Bernie Sanders' plan, because at least that evenly helps people before screwing them up the ass. With Kamala Harris, you get screwed up the ass and you don't even get your debt taken care of, so fuck. That's basically what she's offering. So there's even less reason for anyone in the working or middle class with student loan debt to support Harris as opposed to Sanders. There's even less reason. Like, I already disapprove of Sanders' idea, because his idea with the student loan is, Sticks, you get 30 grand of debt forgiveness. You'll end up paying back way more than 30 grand in excessive taxation because of your bracket within 4 or 5 years. So it's a net negative for me. It's not a net benefit for me. Every penny that I'm saving on paying student loans, I have to pay in taxes, and then some. So basically I get fucked. With Kamala Harris, my goodness, I have to pay more and I don't even get the student loan taken care of. So I have to pay both. So essentially, like, what fundamentally at that point is my tax rate? What fucking cost am I having to incur? And I'm not rich. The fact that I'm making it doesn't mean that I'm fucking wealthy. I'm not pulling in a 7-figure salary. Jesus Christ, she's nuts. But then she comes out with her healthcare plan, right? She's like, well, don't worry, unlike Bernie Sanders, who's going to kick you off private insurance. So here's the thing. If you're like, let's say you're in the somewhere from the upper working class, like almost in the lower middle class, all the way up to people who are rich but not like super wealthy, like billionaire rich, like a doctor, a lawyer. So you're making $250,000 a year, maybe just 150 grand a year, something. You're well off, in other words. Unless you're in San Francisco, then you're solid middle class at that point, but that's a totally different issue. You're somewhere in that range. In other words, you're one of the majority of Americans. You're in that 60 to 70% of Americans within that broad spectrum of income. What happens under Sanders is that you don't have private health insurance anymore. If you're on private health insurance, bye-bye. You're being given a different plan, a government plan. You're not going to get a choice about what it covers. You're not going to get to negotiate costs. We don't even know exactly what it's going to end up being. He's got this very broad plan. He can't even explain exactly how he's going to pay for it. In order for it to be a net zero and not cost anything extra, the marginal tax rate on the rich has to rise by double digits. The business tax has to rise by, 4 or 5%, which is significant. It would put us back up as easily the most taxed business system in the world, which means the economy would probably go into a tailspin. You don't get any choice anymore. You will get government care. That's all that there will be. There will be no health insurance market. You will just simply have taxpayer-funded health care. If you are anywhere in the middle class, you will pay more. And you'll probably get less coverage because you will have a marketplace flooded with additional individuals who otherwise wouldn't be able to have health care at all, which means that it will the waiting times for anything elective are going to be astronomical. It'll fuck up the healthcare system beyond repair. Under Harris, you have a little bit different a system. Because you aren't subsidizing you still have private health insurance under Kamala Harris, supposedly. So supposedly what happens is that you no longer need to tax at least the middle class any more than you're already taxing them. They've got their plans, they've already paid for them. There's no reason for them to pay into the system additional taxes because they're not being taken care of. Her system creates a government option to compete with the private healthcare market. It's slightly similar to Biden's system but goes further. This is for the poor and stuff like that, and it's subsidized by the wealthy. It's a much smaller tax increase. On paper, it sounds fine. On paper, at the very least, it sounds better than Sanders' program, which is going to cost literally everyone in the country huge amounts of money. But it's not, and I'll tell you why, and that's because of one important provision that everyone is ignoring. It gives the government the discretion to price the private health insurance market. That is, it's not like now where you can't gouge people. You can't say, well, I've got the monopoly as far as private insurance in the state without a government option again, so I can charge whatever I want. You can't gouge people, but you can make a profit. If I'm a private insurer, if I'm running a private insurance company, generally speaking, I get to choose the different coverage levels, what they cover, how much they cost, and I'm doing that with profit in mind, because otherwise I'm a private company. There's no reason for me to exist if I can't make a profit, right? Unfortunately, what this does is it gives government the ability to change the prices of my plans, to change what I have to put in those plans. Does the government give a fuck if I'm a private insurer? Does it care if I'm driven out of business when it's already offering a public option? No, it wants to get people onto the public option. It wants as many people as possible. Of necessity, the government will inevitably, this is a guarantee under Kamala Harris program, under this sort of hybrid program, it is a guarantee that the bureaucrats running that will formulate things in such a way as every other bureaucracy in human history has. They will seek to grow, they will seek to justify that increase, they will seek more money, and they will seek to destroy any private competitors by centralization. It is inevitable that this will happen. This is what kills socialism. Centralization, creeping centralization often. There are two ways to centralize. You centralize now or you centralize later. But if you've got centrality at all that's capable of growing, it will grow. This strangulates economies and destroys them. Kamala Harris' program, what it fundamentally will do is over time destroy the private marketplace by making it impossible for private entities to compete, which means it's the same as Sanders' program. It means that Kamala Harris has decided to lie to us all. Instead of being Bernie Sanders and saying, yeah, I'm going to tax you more and I'm going to provide non-private health care for everyone. Everyone will have government care, everyone will pay more, except for the very, very poor. Anyone who's productive at all is going to pay more in taxes, and we're going to have collectivized communist health care. That's what Sanders is offering. Kamala Harris is saying, yeah, the same, but I'm not going to start out that way. I'm going to start out promising you that you can keep your doctor, promising you can keep your private health care. But then the bureaucrats will inevitably get a hold of this system, they always do, and they will price them out of the marketplace. They will destroy the private healthcare system. The taxes will incrementally rise over a number of years. The subsidies over a number of years will be extended maybe to the working class. And then you'll be paying as much as with Sanders' program. And in order to make a net zero program, which the Democrats don't care about deficit spending, but let's assume that they give a shit all of a sudden, in order to do that, you'll have the same tax rate. In fact, you might even have a worse situation than under Sanders. Here's why. Sanders says to hell with it, centralizes it from the get-go. Hopefully he puts something in place to prevent it from growing, because you've already centralized it. It's as central as it can be. There's no reason for the bureaucracy legitimately to grow. At the very least, that might constrain it a little bit. With Kamala Harris, though, those bureaucrats will say, oh, well, look at this company's barely offering the minimum. Maybe we should change the minimum, make them offer more coverage with these junk plans. Maybe, Obamacare already eliminated what the government deemed junk plans. What happened, everybody? It's a hybrid system. Private marketplace is still there. What happened? They got pricier. Wow. And then they install a mandate and they start taxing people who can't afford things. Very odd reverse populism there from Obamacare. What Biden wants to do, and his is literally the only sane healthcare plan being offered by any Democrat, is creepy Joe Biden's plan, which is like, hey, Obamacare is fine, but we're going to add a public option. Everything else remains the same. The problem is, here's my problem with Biden's overhaul. It'll probably turn into the Kamala Harris overhaul and then end up the socialist Sanders overhaul anyway. Because in his situation, why wouldn't the bureaucracy attempt to force more people onto that public option who aren't very poor through more taxation, number one, especially businesses and the so-called rich, which are the boogeyman of every socialist. And number two, why wouldn't they seek to get more people on it by attempting over time to destroy the private marketplace? They'll try to outcompete. It's hard to compete with an entity that can use taxpayer money to subsidize everything that it does now, isn't it? There's the problem of socialized healthcare. There. So yeah, Kamala Harris is straight up lying. Now, there will be no public insurance, no private insurance under Kamala Harris' plan. Not after 10 or 20 years. So yeah, you can keep your plan for now, but eventually it'll be deemed a junk plan and it'll either become too burdensomely expensive, forcing you to get public insurance, the government-run health insurance. It'll be too expensive, or it'll get taxed out of existence. The private insurer will. It'll go under, and it'll stop existing, forcing you to get public health insurance under the government exchange, or something like that. You will inevitably have socialized healthcare. When you think of Kamala Harris, think of Bernie Sanders, because everything that she's suggesting inevitably leads in that direction. It's just socialism light. It's basically sugarcoating the poison. That's basically what Kamala Harris is doing. She's just better at branding. Sanders doesn't bother. Sanders is grumpy grandpa, and he just says, yeah, we're going to have socialism, I'm going to tax you up the ass, we're going to be like total Marxists here. Kamala Harris says, no, 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 I'm not going to be socialistic, kind of, sort of, but here's a few caveats. Which, you know, if you think about them logically, they go away. They inevitably go away because of bureaucracy. It's not going to work. That's about all. Peace out.